On this episode of China Uncensored, toxic products from China are making their way into the United States. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. You know what's my most favored nation? Communist China! And why not? Sure, it's a totalitarian regime that brutalizes its own people, constantly engages in hostilities with other nations, and is a growing cyber menace that costs the US billions in intellectual property theft, but... I'm sorry, what was I saying? Anyway, thanks largely to the Bill Clinton administration in the 1990s, the United States granted China Most Favored Nation status, which essentially opened wide the door to trade. And what a great deal that was. Imports from China rose dramatically. Now, there were some who weren't happy about this, particularly all the American manufacturers who said they were being undercut by cheaper labor costs in China. But hey, that's free market capitalism, and that's as American as apple pie. By the way, China is now the largest apple producer in the world, so part of your pie is probably made in China. But China has, how shall we say, a less than stunning reputation for quality. Even Chinese officials admit the state of food in China is grim. Of course, here in the United States, we don't have to worry about tainted products from China getting across our borders because we have the Food and Drug Administration looking out for us. Between 2006 and 2010, the FDA blocked 9,000 unsafe Chinese products from entering American borders. According to Consumer Reports, in a 4-month period in 2011, the FDA rejected 298 shipments from China that included filthy fruits, cancer-causing shrimp, and poisonous swordfish. Wow! It's a good thing the FDA is keeping such a close eye on imports from a country with a known history of selling tainted goods. What's that, Shelley? The FDA inspects less than 1% of all products seeking entry into the United States? So if there's already thousands of tainted goods from China in a less than 1% sample, how much is slipping through? I can't tell you that, but at least I can tell you a few examples. Here are the top 6 tainted exported Chinese products. Number 6, tainted milk. Melamine is a wonderful fire-resistant chemical compound useful in making, for example, plastic dinnerware. Also, when added to diluted milk, it can make it appear in tests as if the milk has higher protein content, which is why Chinese state-owned dairy producer Sanlu Group added melamine to its milk and infant formula. It's like when you steal from your parents' tequila bottle and replace the missing amount with water. Only instead of water, you add rubbing alcohol. No one will be the wiser, right? So anyway, in China, 6 infants died from melamine poisoning and an estimated 300,000 got sick. That's partially because it happened just ahead of the 2008 Olympics. So naturally, authorities covered it up for as long as they could. But melamine contamination also ended up in exports, including in what used to be one of my favorite Chinese candies. Yes, melamine-tainted White Rabbit candies showed up in Connecticut. And melamine was an even bigger problem in South Korea, where certain varieties of M&M and Kit Kat bars had to be recalled after some of them tested positive for melamine, even though the companies said the levels of melamine were totally safe. Number 5, tainted pet food. Why stop at milk when you can add melamine to wheat gluten too? I mean, what's not to love about melamine's magical fake protein boosting powers? Except that in 2007, the US Food and Drug Administration received reports that about 8,500 dogs and cats had died after eating tainted pet food. But let me make this clear. It's not from a Chinese pet food brand. These were American brands like Nestle Purina and Blue Buffalo. They contained wheat gluten imported from a Chinese producer, and that gluten contained poisonous levels of melamine. According to US law, if only part of a product is from China and it was cooked or processed in the US, it doesn't have to be labeled as made in China. So buying pet food is kind of like playing a game with your dog or cat, a game of Russian roulette. Number 4, tainted fish. China produces 62% of the world's farmed fish. And fish farmers there often use dangerous levels of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, substances that may be banned in the US. So Why do they need to use all these chemicals? Because rivers in China look like this. With such unsanitary conditions for fish, no wonder they have to be pumped full of chemicals. Half of all China's lakes and reservoirs are polluted beyond what's safe for human consumption. But fish raised in the same water is good eating. Number 3. Toxic toys. About 3/4 of the world's toys are made in China, and about 1/3 of those may contain heavy metals, according to research by Greenpeace and IPEN in 2013. And I'm not talking about the kind of heavy metal your parents think is poisonous. No, I mean the kind that can cause permanent damage to a child's nervous and immune systems. No, I mean this. Some of these toxic toys from China make their way into America. In 2007, the US had a massive recall of 45 million Chinese toys because they were coated in lead paint. Mattel alone had to recall 9 million. Don't worry though, the Chinese manufacturers were listening. Most of them stopped using lead. Instead, they switched to other heavy metals like cadmium and arsenic, which have also resulted in recalls. Number 2. Toxic drywall. It seems toxic products from China are something Americans just can't live without, especially when they're living within it. During the housing boom between 2004 and 2007, an estimated 100,000 homes in more than 20 states were built using drywall from China. And guess what? It was toxic! Compounds like carbon disulfide not only erode electrical systems and plumbing, but also make it hard to breathe in your own home. Number 1. Counterfeit pharmaceuticals. Blood is thicker than water. Unless you've been using the blood thinner heparin. China has a huge problem with counterfeit pharmaceuticals. Sometimes they make their way into the United States, where they can kill. In 2008, tainted heparin made by Changzhou SPL, a manufacturing plant in Jiangsu province, killed 81 Americans. And these were only some of the bigger product scandals. So how do you feel about buying products made in China? Or the fact that after so many scandals, we're still importing so much from there? Leave your comments below and be sure to subscribe for more China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time. Did you know that the ancient Chinese were the first culture to invent Hot Pockets? They called them dumplings. Yes, dumplings. So good that on June 26th, I'll be eating as many as I possibly can in front of thousands of people in the middle of New York's Times Square. I'll be joining other YouTube personalities as part of New Tang Dynasty Television's International Taste Asia event. You can come to Times Square on the evening of June 26th to watch live, or check it out in our live stream. And I want you to participate too. Take a photo of yourself eating dumplings and post it to Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Make sure to hashtag dumplingselfie and use @TasteAsiaNYC in your post. We'll select the best photo, and if you win, we'll fly you and a guest to the 2016 competition in Times Square next year. So start eating those dumplings. Just make sure they're not made in China. I mean, sure, China has the largest standing army in the world with 2.3 million people, a military budget of $120 billion, and spider tanks.